Welcome to TPGI's Real People, Real Stories podcast, where you'll find interesting and diverse stories from folks working to make the world a more inclusive place.
Hey, welcome to Real Stories, Real People podcast, brought to you by TPGI. I am your host, Mark Miller, thanking you for helping us keep it accessible. Do us a favor. If you're enjoying the Real People, Real Stories podcast, share it. Tell someone about it. Hey, even link to it from your accessible website. Well, thanks everyone for listening. I'm glad to be back with all of you. And I'm also really happy to introduce two wonderful guests that we have today. Charlotte Dales. Hopefully I did that right.
Dales.
Oh my gosh, I practiced that a bunch of times. Charlotte Dales and Aubrey Northam, who are from an organization called Inclusivity. Or did I mess that up? Inclusively.
That's it.
I practiced this like right before we started. I still can't get it right. It is inclusive.
Yeah, you jinxed it. You overthought it.
I should have said it. I overthought it. You're exactly right. So Charlotte and Aubrey, welcome. As you can tell, your host is not a perfect human being here, but is very happy to have you on. And also, I want to make sure I introduce our lovely producer, Marissa, who is here with us today. So Inclusively, got it that time, is a professional network connecting candidates with disabilities, right? Is that the best way to say it, Charlotte?
Yeah, we're connecting candidates with disabilities with employers who are looking to diversify their pipeline as well as unlock untapped talent pools.
Beautiful, beautiful. And I have to say that I looked sort of briefly skimmed through both of your resumes, but Charlotte, looking through yours, this is not your first gig. You did a whole bunch of stuff leading up to this, including working for some pretty impressive companies or organizations, I guess, like Deutsche Bank. So can you just walk us through how you go from kind of this professional setting that you're in and develop this desire to create something like this?
Yeah, so I started out working at Deutsche Bank right out of college. I wanted to move to London and ended up knew I needed to get into the finance world to get my visa sponsored. So started applying to jobs in finance over in London. And so I started out there and was there for 5 years and ended up quitting my job and starting my first company with one of my best friends there. Had no experience in technology or really anything that we were doing. I had no experience in, was just 24, 25 years old and didn't really have any responsibilities or fear. And so jumped straight in. We started a mobile payment app for restaurants and bars. And we ended up growing that to about 200 restaurants in London and sold that to Amex, American Express, at the end of 2017. And it was around that time that my cousin became the first licensed esthetician in the state of Florida with Down syndrome. Wow. So she gives facials at a local salon. And pretty much after getting my first facial from her, I knew this would be my next company. It was just incredibly clear kind of what the potential was she was told she had in terms of her career, and what she was actually able to achieve was completely different. And so how can we use technology to bridge that gap?
Yeah. I love it, first off, when true professionals sort of get into this kind of thing, because, when you have an altruistic sort of goal, business does get in the way. And if you don't understand it, you don't understand how to get around it. It's kind of maybe the same thing that you're talking about with, was it your cousin that you said? Yeah, your cousin. There's people are telling her that there's all these barriers to maybe being an esthetician because of her downs. But they're just obstacles to get around, to work around, and to sort of will your way through. And I think that when somebody comes at it like you have with a business background, you really have the tools in place to get around those things. So I love to hear that. And it just really makes sense that it's sort of led to success here. And so what is obviously it's this relationship with your cousin, and sort of she becomes almost a mentor to you because of what it's a she, right? I'm
Yes.
making an assumption
Yeah.
of what's her name, by the way?
Cameron Delgado.
Cameron.
Yeah.
So Cameron has these obstacles. She's told she can't do something. She does it anyways. And you go, holy moly, this is amazing. And she becomes this inspiration for you. And then what is her take on all this? Like, she must be like flipped around and just super proud of you. And
Yeah, Cameron has always been super impressive. She's like the epitome of never giving up, chasing your dreams. And she's just incredibly contagious, her zest for life. And I think, she understands, like, I don't know if she even realizes, like, the more successful we get, like how much her story is going to impact so many more people. And I'm actually going to see her tomorrow, and I'm excited to it's fun to give her updates and, have her be a part of the journey as well.
that's amazing. So before we get too much deeper into that, Aubrey, somehow you joined this organization. So tell me your story and your background and how the two of you sort of came together to do this.
Yeah, of course. So I got into web development by way of graphic design, actually. So kind of straight out of college, got into the design scene, and realized that I was interested in web development equally as a career choice for me. So as I went down that road, I was a little bit naturally inclined towards caring about that user experience process just as much as the functionality of what you put into engineering. So that kind of became a natural part of what I really enjoyed working on in my software development career. So as the industry grew, accessibility became, a natural subject of attention for the industry. So a lot of it was self-taught, picking up accessibility skills for engineering here and there. And as clients came into, our software agency, I work with a group called Mobelux based out of Richmond, Virginia. And as more and more clients came with their attention focused on this accessibility space, the more I learned and self-taught in that topic. So when Inclusively came on board and partnered with our team, it was a really natural fit. And it's been a huge learning opportunity for me personally to work on a project where I can really dive in to web accessibility and learn about the testing and the solutions that I never really would have had the resources to dedicate to otherwise.
Nice. Did you hear that, Mercy? She got Inclusively right the first time.
Yeah, I know. Well, that's because she's a Richmonder, and Richmonders are obviously the most brilliant. Hello.
Yeah, you and Marissa.
We're all Richmonders on here, besides Mark.
Yeah. It's like that, what was that, the Sesame Street thing? Like, one of these things doesn't belong.
Yeah, one is not like the
that's
other.
me. I'm the guy. I'm up here in Exeter.
You're the odd man out.
I'm not in Richmond, Virginia. So thanks for that, Aubrey. That's, I mean, what a wonderful pathway, right? And it's, it's interesting because I am always telling people that accessibility really is user experience for people with disabilities. That's all it is. I shouldn't say that's all it is, but that's what it is. And if you really care about user experience, I think you care about user experience for everyone. And it sounds like at a very early stage in your career that really dawned on you and you thought, man, this is the way to go. So how does this now merge you with Charlotte in this effort? How did you guys meet?
Well, so I was living over in London the past 10 years. And my husband, we moved to Richmond for my husband's job. Okay. And I kind of started this company while I was over in London. It was virtual. Once I found out we were moving to Richmond, I started to try and build somewhat of a startup network there. And there was a man who I met that has a son with a disability who found out what I was doing, because I must have been trying to talk to anyone and everyone who would listen to me in Richmond.
Of course, yeah.
And he reached out to me and said, I want to help you. And he said, because I have a son with a disability, I wouldn't be comfortable investing and monetizing anything in this space. However, I believe business is what's going to push it forward. And so what he did instead was just open up tons and tons of doors for me. So Mobelux was a company he's worked with a lot. So many people that I'm working with now are just somehow connected to him. And so Mobelux was one of those people. So it's kind of serendipitous that, like, I guess Aubrey and, the rest of the team were already interested in this space. And we just got connected that way. So yeah.
That's great. That's great. Well, it sounds like, I think, connections are important in business, and it sounds like this guy was really almost a hub for you that was fortunate. So did any of your experiences in London, that's a pretty cool thing for a young person to go do in the first place, is uproot and say, hey, I'm going to start my career off in a whole other country. How did that experience in London really affect you? And is there anything that kind of, I think the world opens up. I was overseas. The world opens up, and it's a bigger place and a more manageable place when you've.
Yeah, I do think so. I'd love to say I was very thoughtful about my career, but ultimately I studied abroad in London and just loved it, and figured out a way to get myself back there. And then kind of starting a company there, looking back now, was not smart. Like, to start a company in one of the most expensive cities in the world, where you have no family, not a huge network, not a huge investor network. And London's just also a tougher place to raise money as a startup, etc. So for my first venture, I feel like we put every barrier in front of us that we could have. But thankfully we got out alive, and I think it really positioned me well for this company to try and do it right. We've still made loads of mistakes, but I do think being abroad and like just really almost being like plopped in the middle of nowhere with not a huge network and having to build it all from the ground up just made, like, it expedited this company. I just kind of knew how to get everything together. And I think if, I had lived in the States for, those 10 years, like, a lot of things might have come a little bit easier. So I think it's through those challenges that.
Well, we decided early on that all this is about just busting through barriers. So why not start it in a city that's way more difficult than it?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Solve your hardest case scenario, and then everything else is easier.
It's a total theme. We don't care about all those difficulties. Figure out a way around it.
So Charlotte, tell me about your business model. If I were a company and I wanted to hire somebody with a disability, then how would I go about doing that using your company?
So we operate under like a traditional SaaS agreement. So unlike traditional recruiters, we're not trying to make like a cut of every single person that's hired, which we believe is more aligned with the community itself. It means that we don't care if a company downloads every single candidate in our database and puts it in their own. That's actually a good thing for the community. It means they're now within these career portals that are within these companies. So the way we're priced is based on how many jobs you want to post on our platform at any given time, it just tiers up on pricing. And then we have like different training modules and other things that are kind of add-on services, but the core of the platform is a tech SaaS platform.
Oh, okay. So it's like a almost like a Monster.com or Indeed or something. Okay.
Yeah.
Specific to people with disabilities. So Aubrey, what is it meant to you to be able to take this sort of passion and that you have for accessible design, accessible coding and development, and work on such a a project that really is, this is important for everyone. What we do is a business, what Marissa and I do at TPGI is help sort of the average company that is providing a product to the world be accessible, but you've sort of lucked out and landed on a company that's really serving that community of people with disabilities. How's that sort of affected you in your career path?
Oh my gosh, yeah, it's been a huge opportunity. You can always take software engineering, infinite ways as a career, but I always like to take on projects that at the end of the day add meaning to someone's life, or make someone's day a little bit easier than it would have been otherwise. And it's definitely the case with Inclusively. We always say that our user base really sets us apart as our biggest strength. And that's true for the engineering side of things as well. Really, we have lots of testing partners and software tools that we use to achieve the goal of providing an accessible web experience and a unique job matching platform for our users. But honestly, our user base is so diverse and so inclusive, coming to the table with different screen reader tools and things like that they use that we don't even have access to, like a testing pool like that. And this user base really is our testing pool. So not only do we welcome feedback from that user base, but we really solicit it as well as a way to grow our platform and make it better for everyone who's going to be using it.
That's fantastic. And I think, just hearing the two of you talk, it really does illustrate that, blend of business with kind of an altruistic goal, and how if the two are really married together properly, then you can truly achieve something. One of the things that I know is that you guys have to have stories where the users of your platform, the people that benefited from all this, have reached back out to you and said, hey, I don't think I could have done this before, or thanks to you guys, or do you have any really cool stories that have kind of come over your desk from this user base?
I mean, one of them is like, they didn't even come to us. They just wrote it on LinkedIn and we saw it. But I guess one of our candidates had been looking for a job for about, I think 6 to 9 months, was laid off during the pandemic, and said she had, I think, done like 500 applications. And after 30 days on our site had been placed.
Wow.
And that's like an incredible story. And I'd love to say that we do that type of work every single day. That's definitely one of the best that I've heard. But I think what was the coolest part was that she didn't like come to us and say like, thank you. She was like, everyone needs to like see this, like people need to understand like what I went through and then how we were able to help. So that's one of my favorite stories, because it's like the theme of what we're talking about. Like, you just have to keep going. And I feel like so many times in doing this company and in my companies in the past, like it's really hard. And like, there's many, many times where you really are sort of like, this is the end of the road. And like, it's so fortunate that I have my cousin and this community to always think about. It's like, I think about what they do and it's like, okay, I can get through this. Like everyone is overcoming challenges that they're either being told they can't overcome or that they think they can't overcome. And you can always find a way forward as long as you just keep putting one foot in front of the other.
Right. Do you find that you wake up in the morning and you're like, oh, I'm a little tired, I don't feel like doing this today, and then you think about somebody like your cousin and you're like, okay, never mind. I don't have any.
I think just whenever I'm getting really stressed about the company, it's always like, it's so nice to think about her and like, just, I don't know, I feel really lucky in that I wake up like so excited every day. And, I've had jobs in the past where I don't feel like that. And I think that, when you, as you said, when you get to like put two things together, which is, doing something good in the world and doing business, it's a great, motivator. Yeah. And when I sold my last company, I said I would never start another company again unless it was to do something good in the world. Because you literally, like, at times you're not doing anything but thinking about that for years straight. And so, you know, my last company, it was helping people get restaurant reservations, not as meaningful, a little harder to grind it out.
I get hungry. I appreciate it.
Come on, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think, you know, I mean, not to speak for Marissa, but Marissa and I, we come to work and we work for a company that helps the world in a similar way. And you certainly can get bogged down in your day, and it is a business at the end of the day, and you are working and have all the same sort of stresses and challenges you would in any other business. But when you do get that moment to step back and take a breath and remember what you're doing, you know, you go like, oh, okay, well, this is worth it. You know, this is way better having all those things go on. And then, but feeling good about the results of it rather than, you know, helping people book a restaurant reservation.
Yeah. And I do think that, you know, not everyone is as fortunate as us to all get to work at these companies where it's really transparently doing better for the world, or at least trying to. However, I do think, you know, what we've seen with our, you know, employers, a lot of them are, you know, banks and tech companies, and, you know, they'll have missions beyond just the core business. But I do think being able to diversify your talent pool, like incorporate more people into it, and like focus on actually creating opportunities for people who haven't had them. Like you can make any job meaningful by just doing that. So I think that's like a thing that we always try to, you know, there's I think an Accenture report that said that companies with a well-run diversity and disability program have 30% higher retention for their overall employees, not just those candidates with disabilities. And I think, you know, a lot of that has to do with, it's just creating more meaning in people's everyday life.
It's almost like, oh, go ahead, Marissa.
I wanted to ask you about that. Do you have a preponderance of a certain type of job that employers are looking for, or is it a variety? I mean, you mentioned Accenture, and I know that a lot of companies are focused on hiring a more neurodiverse workforce because there's a lot of people out there who are very well positioned to do certain types of jobs with like certain types of disabilities.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, so it's a blessing and a curse. I think that, you know, we don't want people to think that if you have a neurodiversity program and you're able to place really high functioning people with autism into tech roles, that you've done your job. That's this much of very small portion of the population of people with disabilities. However, it does bring to light a lot of things to people that actually people with disabilities have a lot of talents beyond people maybe who don't. And so our goal is really to like replicate that use case, but in way more scenarios. So, you know, we do place a lot of tech roles. We place a lot of customer support. We have some roles that we've made a lot of progress towards, but our whole point is that, you know, anyone with a disability can do any job at your company. It just depends on what that disability is. So we really try not to have people focus on like cherry picking jobs for this demographic, because that just will continue to marginalize certain people into certain roles, versus just really looking at what skills do you have, what accommodations do you need? And then from the employer's perspective, what skills do you need? What accommodations can you make? And just strip disability out of the middle of that.
Oh, nice.
I like that. I like the way you said that. And I think, you know, listening to you talk, Charlotte, it's like you guys are a double whammy, right? You know, when you think about it on the surface of your business, you think, oh, you know, this is great. They're helping people with disabilities, which of course is probably the foundation of what you wanted to do. But you're also helping, to your earlier point, these businesses. You know, you're running a great business and a business that has that helps a lot of people, and then you're helping these other businesses do the same, to your point, in their way, right? They may manufacture widgets, like who cares, but they can be a better business overall by incorporating by being inclusive, you know, to people with disabilities. And you guys are a facilitator of that. So it's like you've got both ends of the spectrum being that you're helping. It's really cool. Really cool. And by the way, like a simple concept, right? It's not, it's not, you know,
I think that every day. I'm like, how did someone else not already do this?
Yeah.
A long time ago.
It's not like you invented the new, you know, this new technology for a wheelchair that, you know, was gyroscopic. Like, it was just like, let's take people who want to work and match them with people who need people to work for them, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
let's do that with this group of people that has disabilities, because, you know, Charlotte, that they can do a lot more than maybe somebody else might realize. You know, that was just the glue that put those two things together. So I think it's just brilliant. You know, existing model, you know, nothing nutty about it. It was just you wanting to put this together and doing it, and what an impact, you know.
You make it sound so easy, Mark. You know, like just
Well,
take an
but-
idea that already exists. You know, make
I'll
a
tell you
company.
the hard part, and you know, this is just learning, but you know, so many people focus on like the person with the disability and what skills they have
Yeah.
and what training they need. And it's all about how do we get them into the companies. But so much of it is just the company culture changing certain parts of their interview process,
Mhm.
learning more about accommodations. Like, I didn't even know that there would be like an accommodation team at the company I worked at. And if I'm hiring people, I should know that. But you know,
Yeah.
these organizations are so big. So how do you scalably train a whole, you know, existing company on what are the best practices to interview and make sure that not just your company is inclusive, but your interview processes are inclusive? Because if they're not inclusive, no one's getting past that.
Yeah.
Right.
And you offer training about stuff like that?
Yeah, so that kind of just happened as we started selling in. We just realized people needed it. So
Yeah.
we've been creating some of our own training. We work with partners. Like, there's just a lot of what is the issue in this space too, is that there's so much, there's so many great providers, content, resources, training programs, but it's also fragmented. It's like we're bringing so many of these things just together so that when companies are looking for, you know, certain assistive technologies, et cetera, they can just find everything in one place.
Oh, nice.
And that, so that your training program and your help and all that sort of thing, it happens both on the organization side and on the candidate side.
Yeah, but we're just using partners. So we're aggregating like existing training programs onto our platform. We're not actually doing the training because there's already all these amazing organizations out there. It's just,
Okay.
how do you find them when, you know, maybe your local agency is just giving you the same 5 recommendations they've been giving people for 20 years?
Yeah.
And that's brilliant. And that's what I'm talking about. And I think, Marissa, you could bring a good point. Like, I make it sound so easy. And in one sense, it is. But in another sense, one of the hardest things to do is take an existing model and existing resources like you have and say, we're going to just tweak it this much and create a whole, like, that takes a certain kind of mind. And it's really not easy to do that, I think, because that platform already exists and people are already used to the way it works and already used to the way it serves people. It takes somebody special to go, you know what, we're going to tweak these things about, you know, a hiring platform, you know, about monster.com or Indeed or any of these things, you know, that concept, and create this. And then you can see it in your mind, Charlotte, that you sit there and go like, hey, let's not reinvent the wheel. These things already exist. So we're going to make slight changes in what's already existing out there to aggregate that into our environment so that people can take better advantage of it. So I think it's actually very hard to do, although it looks easy. And it's also, if I can say it, just brilliant. You know, like, you have to have a certain mind that thinks that way and makes these small adjustments to make such big impacts. You know?
Well, and I think one of the things too that like just makes us really different from the core is we are building this with accessibility from like the source code level. Like every other job platform is having to retrofit their massive platforms to be accessible, and they're trying to do overlays and other things. And you know, that's one thing with Aubrey. We've been through many providers, many different services, and like ultimately at the end of the day, as Aubrey said, we just had to start building it and
Code
getting people to test it and then fixing it and have real users doing it. Otherwise, there's no, like, the AI is just not sophisticated enough to automate all of this right now. And I think it's just, it's like, you want to be able to do quick fixes, but you really can't. You have to have real people telling you. And I think a lot of the automated technology, it's compliance, tick the box, but the actual user experience isn't that great for the end user. And they'll only know that if people with disabilities are using their site.
Yeah.
Can you like take that message and tell that to everybody ever?
Well, we had, I'll send you, Forrester did a report on all the accessible technologies, and we were quoted in there saying that. But honestly, we learned that like on our own, just because we were trying to use those. We thought this is the most efficient way. But we just kept getting bad feedback.
Everybody wants an easy button, and
the intention is right. It is more scalable, but to be truly, there's a difference between being compliant and having a good user experience.
And we always say that, like, compliance, conformance to the WCAG guidelines is a baseline. It's a beginning. If you're not reasonably conforming to the guidelines, don't do a usability study, because you're not even far enough along for that, But if you get, and I'm thinking more of somebody that's retrofitting or a bigger organization. You guys had a real advantage to be able to think about it at the beginning. But get yourself at that baseline conformance to the guidelines, and then absolutely, and find a way to maintain that, because that's not easy for the average organization to maintain that. And then absolutely bring the people with disabilities in and have them bring it up to that high level of positive, of really good user experience that only somebody trying to use it and telling you how they would prefer it be better can give you.
So anytime we're doing any type of big new feature or big rollout, we are going to our partner and we get them to do a manual audit of everything.
That's brilliant. Well, any last things that you guys want to add that we didn't cover that you think is real important to know?
I would add, just on the same topic, a lot of companies get kind of abstracted when they're thinking about making a website or a business accessible in the web space. And it's so simple, thinking about a physical building, and the same logic can be applied. And it's helpful to be reminded that it's not really a finish line that we view like perfect compliance. We're always evolving, just like every business evolves for its users. And it's really about the goal of, evolving with your users more so than a finish line for being inclusive and being compliant.
Better to roll things out, make mistakes, and then remediate them quickly than to kind of ignore it altogether.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, it's like any other bug, like, you're not going to be perfect. I think we talked about in the beginning when I messed up everything, right? You're not going to be perfect, but you do need a method to find the errors and quickly correct them. And that, I think Aubrey, you said it the best. There's just no finish line, right? It's an ongoing process. You can make your mistakes. What do you have in place to catch those and fix them quickly and all that kind of stuff? So very well said. Well, thank you guys.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
And I wish you nothing but a huge amount of success, both for your sake and for your cousin's sake.
Yeah.
For everybody.
For all of our sakes, and we're all in this space.
Everybody. Yeah, it's absolutely wonderful. And we're just super glad that you're out there doing it.
Thanks.
Yeah. All right. Well, we have to wrap it up. So this is Mark Miller, thanking Charlotte, Aubrey, and Marissa, and reminding you to keep it accessible.
This podcast has been brought to you by TPGI, the experts in digital accessibility. Stay tuned for more Real People, Real Stories podcasts coming soon.